Now, before the Tatum injury, I feel like we all kind of knew that Boston was going to be making moves this summer. And now we still know that, but we don't know exactly what kind of moves they might be looking to make. Well, we still know they want to shed money, but we don't know exactly what they are thinking of this team. Do they believe next year will be a lost year, or do they believe they can be a 5 seed without Tatum? And maybe he comes back right at the end of the year, you head into the playoffs and you feel like you got a chance, right? Maybe they believe that, but even if you do believe that, is it worth it when you kind of been given this opportunity to reset? Now, before the Tatum injury, I actually seen a world where they would trade Jaylen Brown, going home early, being disappointed in the playoff run. You're one of the most expensive teams in the NBA. Drew Holiday's getting older. You can't really rely on Porzingis. Maybe you trade Jaylen Brown for a Trae Young, right? I don't know why Atlanta would do that, but maybe that's something you would think about. But now with no Tatum, I actually think you want to keep Jaylen Brown, not only to be a good team, but his value might go up being the #1 option and the salary cap going up, and he's no longer going to be the highest paid player in the NBA. And a year from now, Jaylen Brown's deal might look very appealing to some teams where right now, not a lot of teams will be in a rush to pay Jaylen Brown that money. And maybe more importantly, you want to keep Jaylen Brown because what if Tatum comes back and he's not the same player? So if I don't believe they should trade Jaylen Brown, I believe they are going to trade Drew Holiday and they're going to look to trade Porzingis. It only comes down to one other player, and that is Derek White. And Derek White, to me, is kind of like the Denver situation where, yes, Jaylen Brown is better than Derek White. Yes, Jamal Murray is better than Aaron Gordon, but it's kind of that same trio to me. That is how good Derek White has been, but if you're Boston, you really got to look at it and think about how many championship teams would be banging down your door to get Derek White. And you're going to hold on to him with the hopes of still being this championship team when Tatum comes back. But let's say Tatum comes back and he's not the same. Or he's not the same right away, and we're 2 years down the line, and now Derek White is 32 years old, probably still in his prime, but not the same value. And yeah, you got Derek White, but you're no longer this championship core because Tatum is no longer a top 10 player, and Drew Holiday is old, and Al Horford is retired, and you're kind of rebuilding on the fly. Derek White is a little bit less valuable in that scenario. Now, I know there is the other scenario where Tatum comes back and he looks like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's still there and Peyton Pritchard has a bigger role, all that. I could see that side of it as well. But if you're a GM, you kind of got to weigh all the outcomes of this and make that decision. And I know how great Derek White has been, but if you're a GM, these are kind of the moments you live for. Again, every team that believes they are contending next year is going to be calling about Derek White. I'm going to list off a few names I think that could potentially be in the range of a player you might be able to get for Derek White. And you might be able to get picks in some of these scenarios. And these are all young players where if you're Brad Stevens, you are scouring, trying to find which player is going to be the star here. Which player can I build with Tatum and Brown with? And by the way, maybe you guys don't believe that Derek White is this valuable, right? Maybe you don't believe it, but let's start with a crazy one. Actually, you know what? Not a crazy one. I was going to say Jabari Smith Jr., but you know what? Let's say Jalen Green. Jalen Green for Derek White. If you think of Boston in their current predicament, that sounds like a dumb trade. But if you're thinking about the upside of Jalen Green, if you like Jalen Green like that, I kind of am iffy on Jalen Green. But the thing about it is there's a bunch of GMs around the NBA right now that scouted Jalen Green and thought he had superstar potential and probably still feel like he does. I'm not saying Boston is one of those teams, but I'm saying that's the idea around trading a Derek White. Finding that player that is available because Derek White is that good. What about a player that was injured this year, a young team trying to compete right now? What about a Jaden Ivey? Again, Jaden Ivey for Derek White sounds idiotic if you're Boston, unless you really believe Jaden Ivey has star potential and you're going to be in a situation where you're not going to be a terrible team, you're not going to have shots at the lottery, so you might have to take a swing on someone like a Jaden Ivey. Would I do that? No, but I'm sure some team around the NBA, again, believes Jaden Ivey is that guy. And you know what? It's not the same situation at all because we don't really know what Boston is thinking if they're thinking they're going to be contending next year. But we kind of just seen this exact deal. Again, not the same situation, but we kind of just seen it with Caruso for Josh Giddey. I'm talking about a deal like that. Now, it's hard to envision yourself as the Bulls in any scenario if you're the Celtics, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you got a chance to hit on something like that. What if the Warriors give you pods and a first for Derek White? Again, that sounds like a bad trade unless you really believe in pods. who to me has a lot of similarities with Derek White if you look at their per 36 numbers. Obviously would be a fan favorite in Boston. I'm just saying there's going to be a bunch of these players out there that one of them, Brad Stevens, is going to say, oh, that guy could be a star here. And are we really going to keep Derek White to be a first-round exit team next year? Even though Derek White is signed like 4 more years, by the way, so that complicates things a little bit. But that's going to be 33, 34-year-old Derek White when we can go get a young all-star right now, whoever you believe that is. That's why I'm trying to make it clear. Like, depending on how you feel about these players, your reaction is different. Some people looked at Josh Giddey like, what is, other people said, oh, Josh Giddey, he's going to be an all-star. So the Bulls believe they just traded Alex Caruso, who just won Game 7 for OKC, so let's not diminish Alex Caruso, but they traded Alex Caruso for a young 22-year-old all-star in their eyes. So would I trade Derek White for Jaden Ivey? No. But if I believe Jaden Ivey was going to be an all-star level player, I probably would do it. But that is with me having the mindset that Boston is not going to be this championship contending team next year. Maybe they see it differently. And I've only been talking about the players you could get, but there might be a team out there willing to give you 2-3 first-round picks and a young player that doesn't have star potential, but a young player for a Derek White. Teams that come to mind for that immediately, Memphis. Not sure how the money would work there, but I'm pretty sure they would give up multiple first-round picks for Derek White. Orlando, maybe you still truly believe in Anthony Black, and you can get Anthony Black and 2 first-round picks. Whatever the case may be, there are going to be a bunch of these scenarios across the league, and I'm sure you can find one that you would do. I haven't really came across like my favorite one of these scenarios. I don't really love any of these, but that's why I'm saying as a GM, these are kind of the moments you live for, because you have an opportunity right now to reset your franchise with a couple moves, with hopefully Jason Tatum returning as a top 10 player in the NBA and returning to a team with young talent, with picks and ways to get better around him. So maybe I didn't present the best example of a Derek White trade, but I believe the bidding war is going to be so crazy for him that there's going to come to a point where you kind of have to take one of these deals. I think it's going to be that crazy. So then you make that move. You probably trade Jrue Holiday, Porzingis, try to recoup assets for them. Take a bit of a step back next year, but you still got Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornett's going to be back, whatever you get for the Derek White trade. And in the East, that team could still be a 7 seed somehow, right? But then the following year, you can make the Jaylen Brown decision where his value is probably going to go up. The cap is going to go up. More people would want that deal. And you can make that decision, and also you're going to have more assets to maybe go get a 3rd star. Maybe you want to add Trae Young to Jaylen Brown and Tatum, and now you got multiple first-round picks and a young player you can go get them with, Or maybe you hit on the Derek White trade and you get that 3rd all-star in that deal. Do I believe it is a surefire thing? No. But I believe as a GM, you kind of got to give yourself the best odds. And I think the idea of just holding on to Derek White to be a middling playoff team next year, and then Tatum comes back and you're still trying to, is Tatum going to be that guy? Why not give yourself the upside of having more options? You give yourself more upside for getting that player in the draft, getting that player in a deal, right? If you trade Derek White and get the type of haul I would expect for Derek White. And this is not me saying, this is obviously a sign of respect to Derek White, because I believe some team is going to pay a ridiculous amount for Derek White because he is that good. He fits with so many teams. Every contending team is going to want Derek White. And if you're the Celtics, how can you really just sit that out? Of course, nobody wanted Tatum to be injured. That goes without saying, but it is very, very rare you get this opportunity to rebuild with as many assets as you have that are now going to be worth more to other teams than they are to you. Jrue Holiday next year is going to be worth more to the Clippers than to you. Derek White next year is going to be worth more to the Warriors than to you. Porzingis is going to be worth more to whoever than to you. And you are going to replenish with young players, somewhat high upside, somewhat not very high upside, and picks, and then get Jason Tatum back, hopefully still in his prime. I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer. You have to go that route. And I've only been talking about the somewhat positive outcomes with Tatum. What if Tatum is never the same player and you hold on to Derek White for 2 more years and now you just got a 33-year-old Derek White with limited value for what? So not only do I believe that trading Derek White and trading Jrue Holiday and Porzingis and all that would be the best outcome, even if Tatum does come back the same player, if he doesn't, it is absolutely the best outcome to trade those guys and start the rebuild right now. But maybe you guys disagree. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. It would mean the world to me. On the road to 10,000 subscribers, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.